All around the world, they're preparing for Day X. Venezuela, Maduro rallying his troops, galvanizing them in anticipation of a landed invasion, possibly, of U.S. Marines, will be accompanied by an armada of warships. Or is it just that the U.S. is positioning itself and distributing its assets to the southern hemisphere in anticipation of Day X? That fateful day when they pull the trigger, they push the proverbial red button, and it's lights out. Maybe that's what that's all about. Right now in Russia, we are witnessing one of the biggest attacks on an oil refinery, and this is in the last hour, so this is not yesterday or the oil refinery the day before or the day before that. This is another one today. And this has to be one of the biggest attacks on an oil refinery inside Russia that I've ever seen. I'm just losing track of how many, these hundreds of these facilities have been hit now. And the question is, how much more degradation of one of Russia's most critical lifelines can they sustain before they have to resort to non-conventional means? This is why you're seeing increased strategic aviational activity around the planet, whether it be in the Alaska Air Defense Identification Zone, in the Arctic, in the North Sea, in the Black Sea, in the Baltic Sea, in the Caspian Sea. Iran is about to exit the Non-Proliferation Treaty because snapback sanctions have been reimposed. You got shit flaring up in Indonesia, the Pakistan-India thing still on ice, Lebanon, Gaza Strip, Syria still flaring up, China about to have one of the biggest military parades in the history of mankind, and their activity around Taiwan is also incredibly suspect. And the U.S. had the bright idea to move Typhoon missile launchers that can launch Tomahawk missiles, which can be nuclear tipped, into Japan in order to position themselves along Russia's eastern flank. This is all POTUS approved. This is NATO approved. This is POTUS approved. Okay, look at that. They just hit it again. Multiple hits. This is the mandate. Pretend that you're friends. Delay the inevitable whilst seeing how far you can push this game of nuclear chicken. That's what this is all about. And you know what the absolute proof of that is? This gold record close today, $3,516.40. You remember when I was telling you at $2,000 that meant something? Well, here we are, 3,516. And there's going to be a time when we look back at this and call this the good old days. That's absolutely incredible. The higher that number goes, the more intractable the situation becomes. In fact, at 4,000, we're guaranteed to have another war by 4,000. Every 1,000 increment is another war. I remember when Bob Moriarty was on the channel about a year ago, he said, I don't even know if I want to live in a world. I don't even know if I want to hold gold. That's the gold paradox. Do you want to hold something that valuable when it's $5,000? Because the state of the world, what it would have to be for it to reach that height, would be rather abysmal. Silver is no exception either. We have silver, who is now in Canadian dollars anyways, at a new all-time high once again, with the exception of that brief ephemeral blip in the 1980s that I don't really count. Most people will reference 2011 as being another high for silver, but they measured it in US dollars. And so US dollar was very weak post-financial crisis, and it didn't really pick up again until the teens. So it's a bad metric to use US dollars. The Canadian dollar compared to the American dollar at that time was very strong. So it's better to measure silver in Canadian dollars, I find, if you want a more reliable nominal metric anyways of what's going on. So silver today in Canadian dollars approaching $55 Canadian for 1 ounce of silver. I tell you, man, commodities, the rich know. Take a look at this. Insider trading. This is from Bar Chart. Follow the smart money. The rich people are jumping ship. They're building bunkers. Okay, you could not, I don't know how glaringly obvious it needs to be. Rich people with money are building bunkers, buying apocalypse retreats, and they're getting out of the markets in droves. They're all exiting. You know who isn't exiting? The heavily overexposed to this insanely overvalued market retail investor. They want the retail investor to hang in there. And in fact, I think historians are going to look at the HODL movement, the HODL movement, as being a psyop perpetrated at the end of this system by the people who pull the levers of influence and media to encourage all of the retail investors to stay in the scam, to stay in the bubble as long as possible so that they can buy and they can be the bag holders as the rich exit the system, okay? So that's what I suspect is happening. Just having a little technical difficulty here. What's going on? Just going to make sure my video monitor is on here. I've had it happen where I'll be making these videos and halfway through some technical glitch derails the entire thing. Let's go, let's go. All right. So they're getting out of the system. That's not financial advice. That's just what they're doing, okay? And take a look at this. I mean, this is the biggest tell ever. Foreign central banks hold more gold than treasuries. Central banks' gold versus U.S. Treasury holdings as a percentage of international reserves. So this is the Cold War ending, basically, for the most part. It was probably around here in the early 90s, but nonetheless, this is where the crossover came. Here's where we are today. What this is gold holdings as a percent of foreign reserves. So countries viewing gold as a safe haven for, as if their currency were to fail versus US dollars. For the longest time, a lot of people wanted US dollars, right? Especially through that whole Chinese globalization boom. They wanted USD. Now people are abandoning US dollars and they're moving to gold. Look at that upswing since 2020, just whoosh, right? And there's potential for that to go much higher. So if you look right now, we're about 25% holdings. That has been at some point 75% in some cases, okay? So if that, we're talking about triple. And that's just presuming, because the system becomes more, with every convulsion, it becomes more intractable and it becomes so unstable that each one of these dominoes that falls also almost increases the likelihood that something else is going to break in the system. You know what I mean? So I could see this going exponential, complete abandonment of US dollars as reserve currency. That could very well be solidified at what is likely going to be one of the biggest, most epic military parades in history in China in the next week. Putin, picture this. You're going to have standing side by side each other. I think for the first time, you're going to have Lukashenko. You're going to have Putin. You're going to have Kim. You're going to have Pezeshkian. You're going to have Xi Jinping. You're going to have all the gangsters in one area, with the exception of all the gangsters in Western governments. And that's going to be very enticing, number one, for NATO to not try to make a move while that's happening, because that's going to be huge. Right now, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization is currently having a meeting. Putin's going to be there for a week. That's big news unto itself. Big things are being hatched for September. Major military exercise coming in Belarus, possible big aerial offensive. We got talks about troops moving into Ukraine. We got the shit hitting the fan here every single damn day. Well, we're hearing about peace and Witkoff saying this and that. And oh yeah, they're going to come to the table. Nobody's coming to the table. I warned you since day one that that whole thing was just a front to buy more time. Nobody believed me. Okay, I told you since day one that it was all going to go to shit. Here we are, and the war is more intense than ever before, and Trump's not only allowing this to happen, because flying manned recon planes that are facilitating this, something that never happened under Biden. I know I'm beleaguering that point, but it's worth mentioning because now they're sending long-range weapons, and I would not be surprised if they're already using these new long-range missiles and that's what happened tonight, because this is a lot of hits on one facility, on a facility that's already been struck, that clearly has air defense, because you can see the air defense working in that region. Well, it's not working. And if it's not working, these aren't drones. These have to be, those got to be missiles. And if those are NATO missiles, then Putin's got to make a choice at some point. Do you continue this game of chicken, or do you put an end to this right now? Now, here's what's going on, and here's how they might put an end to it. Okay, where do we want to go first? Okay, so we got all this nuclear sniffer plane activity. The Boeing WC-135R Constant Phoenix in the Mediterranean. It was in the North Sea the other day. And they're clearly looking for something. This is a plane that is used to detect radioactive particles. So they're looking for possibly a test of a Russian Burvestnik nuclear-powered cruise missile. And right now in Novaya Zemlya, I don't know why they'd be in the Mediterranean. I mean, some people think they're looking for submarines. But in Novaya Zemlya, they're clearly getting ready to do a test because they have the planes there that are going to be used to monitor and fire this missile. I don't know all the details of it, but this is a satellite shot of that region. This is the missile itself. So this is the launcher. Must be, I presume, encased in lead or something, whatever nukes are encased in. Obviously, I guess it doesn't, well, yeah, it's got a nuclear plant inside it, however that works. So it would have to have some protection. People are wearing masks, and I think that's probably just standard for any weapons production facility. But so this is the canister, this is the missile. You can see a guy in the background there. We don't really get somewhat of a relative size. It's not as big as I thought it would be, to be honest. It's about, the width of a car, slightly less than a car. And this is what they're trying to test, okay? So they're constantly trying to increase their strategic capability to offset the fact that conventionally they're having troubles, with the exception of, artillery shells and the proliferation of other, medium effectiveness conventional weapons. This was in, I believe this was in Ukraine. This is a factory that manufactures the, what are they called? The Bayraktar Turkish drones. So that went up in smoke. Ukraine's getting hit hard tonight as well. This was in Dagestan today. Quite possibly sabotage, terrorism. It could very well be. I don't think these things are accidents at this point. We're seeing things blow up all around the world. Gas stations, LNG terminals, natural gas facilities. This cannot be a coincidence. And it's not just in Russia and the United States. Even in the ports in Germany, they had this port that went up, and it's still exploding. They're saying it's radios and electronics, and maybe it is lithium batteries, but I don't think so. I think the conspiracy is true, and it in fact is weapon systems that were destined for Ukraine. So there's a shadow hybrid war currently underway, and this is way more serious than most people think. I mean, the day is going to come, man, where everybody is going to be piling into this channel looking for advice. And for that, I would say go to the Canadian Prepper channel, okay? Go to the Canadian Prepper channel. I just released a video that's going to help people, hopefully within their region, find a safe place to either bug out to or to anchor if you're looking to buy land. I've devised and am honing a new system, a new algorithm that is going to help people determine whether or not a property is suitable for a full-blown Day X, Mad Max apocalyptic situation. And I'm actually going to be starting a new series of videos where I go out to these properties. It's going to be a collaboration with various real estate companies where I'm going to be going out and we're going to be talking about the survivability of various properties. It's going to be cool, man. I really look forward to it. So stick around for that. But if you want to actually have actionable information and learn something and do something and not just sit there and consume all this bad news, you got to be pairing this stuff. This is crunch time, okay? The day is going to come when you're going to look back on just one of these days that we had before the lights went out, and you're going to be kicking yourself, man, if I would have just taken one day to do something that now takes me 100 days because there ain't no way. It's something, that one thing that you could have got at Home Depot that could have made all the difference. You know what I mean? Just go and study the Canadian Prepper channel and other channels like it. There are thousands of videos on there, practical videos. I implore you to go and do it for your own good, for your family's good. Because whether you like it or not, your family and your extended family who's going to come knocking on your door, they're going to look to you for advice, because they're going to remember you were the guy that was always warning them about this stuff, and it's going down. Everywhere, it's going down. Taiwan, China, you got Boeing surveillance planes flying in and around Taiwan. China has doubled the amount of military spend in the last year alone. Let me see if I have the slide here. In terms of their preparation for an offensive in and around the Taiwan Strait. You see, Taiwan estimates China spent 40% more on Pacific drills last year. Remember, the bigger and bigger the drill, the greater the likelihood that it's real world, not exercise. Do I need to say that old aphorism? There are no military exercises, only World War III disguises. You got it. That's what it is. And we got a big exercise coming in September. The government has approved changes to the rules for conscription. Russia is ratcheting up conscription efforts. Now, it used to be in the past, if you were conscripted and you were deemed mentally or medically not suitable for service, you would basically be given your walking papers. Now, if you are, you can still be called up within a year of that period of time, and they've increased the fines, and they're going to be expanding conscription inside Russia. They're doing the same across Germany, across some of the Baltic states. Everybody's gearing up for war. They're all trying to outspend each other on military equipment. Germany completed their railway corridor to Ukraine. Yes, they have a railway corridor now to ship military equipment into Ukraine, if you can believe that. I think it's pretty much completed at this point in time, the Schengen, or one leg of the Schengen corridor, as they call it, to move large amounts of equipment towards the Eastern Front. And they're also in the process, I believe it was MERS today who said, yeah, we're actually in a state of war with the Russians because they're flying drones over our military facilities and things like this. So there's a covert hybrid war that's being waged in the shadows that, we don't even see, we don't even hear about half of the stuff that's really going on. The only thing we can see, the only thing that doesn't lie is that right there. That's the price of gold. Now, let's just, okay, there's just so much going on. Russia, Chinese submarines sail together in the Sea of Japan. Lots of activity, strategic activity. This is major because these partnerships are becoming more and more entangled. And when you have the Chinese and the Russians sailing nuclear submarines together, that's saying a lot, okay? Because that becomes very close to a partnership where it's a mutual defense partnership. And if you get into a situation where you have the Chinese and the Russians about to create a mutual defense partnership, then it's game over. It's game over for NATO at that point. NATO will have to act, they'll have to do something, they'll have to escalate. What they probably do in that situation is just go for the low-hanging fruit. Because if there's a mutual pact, then the Chinese actually start supplying the Russians with soldiers and military equipment, which is very possible. I think China wants to postpone that as long as possible. And it looks as though today maybe the tariffs won't stick because they've been what's the word I'm looking for? They've effectively been shot down by the court system. And Trump is saying that the tariffs still stand. But unfortunately, for him anyways, it looks like they might not be able to continue to impose tariffs on all these countries. So who knows? They're going to take it to the Supreme Court, and I believe the Supreme Court is stacked in Trump's favor. So, maybe it will turn out that the tariffs will stick. Either way, for now, we still have a trade war being waged. This is a Boeing RC-135 rivet joint plane. There was a delegation that was sent to Taiwan to go and provoke the Chinese once again. Remember, there are U.S. Special Forces. I believe there's an island that is not too far from Taiwan. It's a little island somewhere around here. You actually have U.S. military on that island, okay? And so, I mean, it's just insane. If that situation was ever reversed, we would already be in a state of war with the Chinese. Now that I kind of went through all the slides, let's go back out of here. It's Friday. I kind of want to get home and spend some time with the kids this weekend. What time do we got here? Where are we at? Right, 18 minutes. Okay. Let's just go over all the details. Russia. Talking about NATO troops in Ukraine. They're against the idea. Moscow's mission to the UN reiterated that any NATO troop deployment in Ukraine would be absolutely unacceptable. So NATO is now trying to figure out workarounds as to how they can put troops in Ukraine and not piss the Russians off. The Russians allegedly have a huge manpower advantage at this point in time, but for some reason, they're not advancing yet. And so there's only a couple reasons as to why they might not be advancing at this point in time. One, they're about to do a big air offensive, and it's going to start in September, or they know that there is a secret line, red line, that if they cross that red line, then they're going to potentially open up Pandora's nuclear box. And that there's an unwritten rule of thumb with NATO that don't go beyond this point or else we're going to have to get involved, regardless of the fact that Ukraine is not yet the 33rd NATO member. According to British authorities, in all likelihood, they have begun to prepare the groundwork for partial legalization of their military presence in Ukraine. Now, this will likely exceed the role that it currently is in terms of providing people to train Ukrainian troops. They'll be playing a more overt role in terms of either directing hostilities or partaking directly in these hostilities or just acting as peacekeepers. Now, the Ukrainians have rejected the prospect of having the Chinese in there, and you need some sort of a third party that the Russians would trust. They're trying to say, well, maybe we'll bring Turkey in, but Turkey's a NATO member at the end of the day, and Erdogan is one of the most duplicitous snakes around. So I'm pretty sure that the Russians would not entrust that responsibility to them. I don't think they would feel comfortable it being a NATO member. It'd have to be a non-NATO coalition of peacekeepers that was enforcing this thing. Oh, that's never going to happen. Okay, this thing is going to be sorted out on the battlefield, hook or by crook. Poland and Russia had a consular spat. Moscow revoked the permit for Poland's consulate in Kaliningrad. Okay, that's significant because we know there's nukes in Kaliningrad. And if there ever was something to pop off, it would likely be in that direction towards the Suwalki corridor and the exclave of Kaliningrad, where that's probably an easy target. And remember, there was an American commander who recently threatened that they could leverage AI in order to take Kaliningrad in a very short period of time. With respect to the Burvestnik at Novaya Zemlya, there's lots of satellite, NOTAM, and air activity, and OSINT points to intense activity in July and August, suggesting preparations for the Burvestnik test if it hasn't happened already. It may have, in fact, already happened. There's A-50U and Ilyushin 76 telemetry aircraft. These are the aircraft that I showed you here, and these are supposed to be aircraft that are essential for this test, okay? So this A-50V and this Ilyushin plane, 76 telemetry plane, that's supposed to be solely for the purpose of, and this Novaya Zemlya is historically, it's way up in the Arctic. That's why you have that E-3B command and control plane up there, the nuclear plane in Patufik Air Force Base. You see how it's all coming together? Like this all just, you know, this nuclear stuff is ratcheting up. So, you know, this would definitely be a test because in terms of intermediate range missiles and the INF treaty, this is, well, I mean, this is beyond that because this can go, you know, this is a cruise missile that is maneuverable, but it can travel as far as it wants. So it's a game-changing weapon if it actually exists and if it actually works, that is. Even if it doesn't work, the Russians have the Rezhniks, they have all their older stuff, they have the nuclear submarines, they have their hypersonics, you know, I mean, but they're trying to excel in all of these areas. They got the Poseidon nuclear torpedo. I mean, you know, they're prepared, and even the U.S. government admits that the Russians have outdone them with respect to nuclear weapons, and this is why Donald Trump wants to rein in the nuclear weapons, because they realize they're at a disadvantage, or at least so we're told they're at a disadvantage, and they don't want the Chinese rising up to parity with them. The WC-135R plane, I believe that's the Constant Phoenix, that was off the coast of North Africa in the Mediterranean. Apparently, this WC-135R is utilized to sample airborne radionuclides from nuclear tests and fallout. That's interesting. Why would these planes be up in the air? Are they really suspecting that Russia or some country in that region is doing a nuclear test? It's hard to say. Russian nuclear forces modernization. U.S. assessments have long noted Russia's extensive nuclear modernization, with Russia itself claiming 95% completion of all of their new age nuclear programs. France and Germany are entering into a nuclear partnership. They said that they will provide additional air defense to Ukraine, launch a strategic dialogue on nuclear deterrence. It's interesting, France and Germany. Remember, there's already nukes in Germany. U.S. nukes are currently in Germany. And they're also going to be working on an early warning missile system called the Joule system. Don't know much about this system, a main ground combat system alongside the Joule early warning effort in an attempt to bolster their strategic capabilities. The Germans accuse Russia of drone infringements in their airspace, although Dmitry Peskov dismissed the New York Times report alleging Russian drone surveillance over these regions was a fake news story. There is a fire at a port in Hamburg. I don't have the video here today, but there's rumors that it was ammunition. Now, this very well could have been some sort of chain reaction fire with lithium batteries. That happens, and those things explode, and as we've seen in the pager attack, they can explode big time. And so it could be that. They're blaming gas cylinders and lithium batteries, but not everybody is convinced. Some people think that this is actually munitions that were intended for Ukraine. Chancellor Friedrich Merz of Germany states that they're in a state of conflict with the Russians. They're already in a state of conflict with Russia, citing hostile influence operations and infrastructural attacks. Again, there could be more than meets the eye, more than countries even want to admit, especially on the cyber front. You'd only admit that you were attacked if there was a reason to do so, because never mind just the insurance aspect, you don't want to panic your population. Remember, at this point in time, it's all about mitigating civil unrest and preventing people from losing their shit. If you can keep people hodling for the longest time and keep their money parked in, the fake stock market and not convert that zeros and ones on a screen into tangible stuff that will help them ride out the collapse of civilization, that's a good thing if you're the elites. Finland is looking at conscription, as is Lithuania. The E3 triggered the UN snapback mechanism, which means that the Iranians in 30 days are going to have sanctions reimposed. Now, they're saying that this is going to be absolutely devastating for their country. Certainly not putting on a poker face at all. I don't have any slides ado with Iran right now, but we know that that situation is going to explode invariably. We know that once Israel is done whatever they're going to do here in the Gaza Strip, it seems as though they've sublet the responsibility of disarming Hezbollah to Lebanon, which appears to be working so far. I can't foresee that working for long. Syria is still highly unstable, but once they kind of get those things to where they want them, I think they're going to pivot back to Iran. It really comes down to, do they believe they have the missile defense to prevent an even bigger onslaught on Tel Aviv? But it appears as though Iran does not want to fight, because they've allowed the International Atomic Energy Agency back into the country, but they've yet to permit them to go and sample all the places that they need to and investigate and conduct their audits, because of course they're worried that they are spies, because there was a lot of evidence to show that part of the reason why the decapitation strike happened is because the IAEA and Rafael Grossi were forwarding all the information to the Israelis. So why would you ever let the fox into the henhouse again? I don't know. The Iranians are trying to play the game that the Russians were playing, where they're trying to engage in this diplomacy, but they have no nuclear leverage. So it's the wrong game to play. If you're the Iranians, you need to build nukes. You need to do what Kim Jong-un did. You need to be a dictator. You need to build nukes. And now North Korea's economy is actually growing for the first time in some time. And it's mostly owed to the fact that they're having a mutual defense pact with the Russians, because they were the only ones to really stick their neck out and support the Russians when the Russians needed help. So now their economy is growing because they got cheap Russian grain and oil and gas. So, this is the new multipolar reality, is that if you were a dictator and you got nukes and you held out long enough, now you're going to reap the spoils of that. But Iran played it dumb. What they should have did is they should have secretly started amassing nuclear material instead of, or they should have kept it at a level that was deemed acceptable and boosted and built up their economy, built up their society, built up those resilient systems. And then you come out with like 10 nukes out of left field and say, okay, here's our terms. They didn't do that, so they're screwed. They're pretty much screwed at this point, unless the Russians park some assets there. And I highly doubt that Russia has a lot to spare at this point in time. You could see they're being hit from all angles, and they need every S-400 system that they got, because Europe and the United States, Donald Trump especially, has it in for Vladimir Putin, regardless of what people think. Travel warning issued by Germany. Avoid travel to Iran out of risks of retaliation. Iranian hardliners floated the NPT withdrawal, abandoning the non-proliferation treaty, would of course signal that they're getting ready to create a nuclear weapon, and then that war is going to kick off. Now, if Iran's smart, they're going to wait till shit starts up in Venezuela. They're going to let this Russia-Ukraine situation escalate a bit further, and then you wait till China makes its move in Taiwan. Now, wouldn't it be something that if after this big military parade, because they have this capability, it's just a matter of, do they all trust each other enough? Right now, if the Chinese, North Koreans, Iranians, and Russians all made mutual defense pacts, I think it's game over, because they could just all attack at once. And what would we do? Like, we don't have the capability to deploy. The only thing we could do is execute the Day X decapitation strike plan and hope it works. And that is to try to take out all the leaders in one fell swoop, which I wouldn't put it past them for trying. I'm not saying it's going to happen. Somebody's going to run with that somebody. You said that they were going to be destroyed on the military parade. I'm saying it's a possibility. The risk is always there, as unlikely as it may be. Yes, I talked about the Typhoon mid-range missile system that's deploying to Japan for exercises. Moscow has called it a destabilizing step and urged Tokyo to reconsider. Remember, they got their North Korean attack dog in the Pacific, and they're the ones who typically do their ICBM tests in the direction of the Japanese island chains. So, that's probably what you're going to see. You're probably going to see the North Koreans do another ballistic missile test in Japan's direction, just to put them on notice. Chinese and Russian media highlighted their first joint submarine patrol in the Sea of Japan, featuring Kilo-class subs with support ships. Yeah, that's about it. Germany is arming the Ukrainians. Anyways, guys, here we are. $3,500 gold. And this is not a ceiling, this is a floor. Because gold has been consolidating at this $3,500 level for really the last 6 months. We first crossed at 3,500 or 3,400. Remember, it shot right up, and then it kind of dipped back down to 3,250, and then it kind of did this, and now we're up the staircase again. And I suspect that this is bad news. Good news if you bought gold a year and a half ago when I don't want to say I told you to buy it, because I never tell you. I just said that, it's probably not a bad thing to consider. Then you're probably doing all right with this number. But just remember that everything has basically doubled in price since that time in terms of depreciation of the currency. Since 2020, everything is just more expensive. All services are more expensive. It seems like everything you do, everything you go buy, that little part, that little service that you had to get done, it's just so expensive nowadays. Everybody just wants so much money for everything, where even people who are, more well off are just doing it themselves because, people are just charging ridiculous, obscene amounts for like a couple hours of work. It's like, are you crazy? Anyways, Keep prepping, man. Keep on prepping. I know my phone's gonna blow up, and unfortunately, I'm getting out of the game because they're doing so much stuff at the border. I'm talking about my store, CanadianPreparedness.com. They've made our lives so incredibly complicated. It's the bureaucracy on both sides of the border, the US and Canada, our government, your government, making it impossible to do business. You got insurance on top of that. You got potential postal strikes on top of that. You got big tech breathing down your neck. Oh, you can't sell that. That could be used as a weapon. So, and then of course you get all the trolls in the comment section who think that I'm just here to sell stuff. Look, the best way for me to sell stuff would be to do political rage bait. Nothing sells stuff like political rage bait. And I know the recipe. All I got to do is be like, you know what? Come out as a Trump hardliner tomorrow, defend every hypocritic thing he does, not Hippocratic, hypocritical thing he does, and promote my Patriot Supply, shitty food, shitty wise, and everybody would love me for it, right? Well, as long as I scapegoated one group of people as being the reason for the world's problems and made everybody pissed off. And, see, that's the only difference. I'm giving you the objective take on things. I'm telling you what's going to happen. I'm an actuarial preparedness scientist. I try to view this through the least amount of bias prism that I possibly can to get you the objective information, because all I care about is how I'm going to survive what's coming, how we are going to survive what's coming, whether that be myself, my family, my extended family, the broader community at large, we as a nation. How are we going to be able to ride out what's coming? And if you're not viewing that through a clear head, and if you're full of anger and somebody, this is the litmus test, okay? If the person you're listening to is pointing the finger at somebody else being the reason that things are messed up, that person is blowing smoke up your ass. They are manipulating you, because that is one of the telltale signs of a grifter. Because they need you to be wound up about, oh, it's the blue-haired transgendered people that are collapsing. We're all fucked in this society. Each one, look at, pick any demographic and I'll show you 10, active shooters from that demographic. Everybody has their own version of the disease, guys. Whether you're black, white, Mexican, gay, straight, transgender, it doesn't matter. This entire society is messed up. And it's until we start acknowledging that we are the problem. A lot of people say, oh, I'm not the problem. You're the problem, right? Okay, maybe to an extent that's true. We still have to take responsibility. What is our role in that? Why did we allow this to get to that point? You know what I'm saying? So that's why I'm getting out of the game, because I'm sick and tired of all of that stuff. And then I try to do the good thing for people. I try to it's a bit of a lament, I know, but I try to bring people good quality products that are going to keep them safe, because there's so much shit out there. There's so many people trying to take advantage of people. And I'm not trying to be sanctimonious or anything. This is just the truth. There's a lot of companies out there giving subpar quality products to people, giving them a false sense of confidence that it's going to help them through hard times, and they're making insane margins off this incredibly low quality stuff. And I wanted to make a store to prevent that, but the headache, and it's just become way too much, and I'm spending too much time on that and not my family, on my own preparedness endeavors and making these videos. So for that reason, CanadianPreparedness.com is effectively going to be sold. And it's probably just going to be subsumed by some other company. Maybe they'll keep the website up, or maybe I'll continue the website and just do affiliate. I won't do, direct sales anymore. I won't manage the logistics. That's coming. And right now, of course, we're having a 20% off clearance sale on stuff that you're never going to get 20% off anywhere else. But we cannot ship to the United States right now until all this stuff is worked out. There's, they want you to prepay. Now you have to pay duties and taxes when shit comes across the border. Right now, we still had a few orders that were not able to go out before some of these changes, policy changes came into effect. So we may have to either, until we figure out the new system that Shopify and Canada Post and all of the shipping companies put together for us, if it works, fine, but you know, we can't sustain a 35% tariff in that direction. It's not feasible. So we might be doing a few refunds. Regardless, you know, if you're Canadian, you're going to get some good deals. And yeah, so that's what's going on, my friends. I hope you guys enjoy the weekend. Might be the last hot one, at least if you're up here in the northern hemisphere. Probably, you know, these days are numbered in terms of summer anyway, so go out there and enjoy it. Thanks for watching, my friends. Take care.